Okay, good morning. We're learning as a chusva for Shlema Filana Chaya Basarach. We're on Daf Ayin Amud Aleph, 3 lines from the end of the narrow lines. Tan Rabban. This is a brisa that says some of the halachas, some of the inyanim that were covered over the last plot. This is the brisa that where it came from. The pasuk says v'chelav nevela v'chelav treifa. Right, we bought from Rav Shizbi that he said, he darshan from this pasuk. Pasuk says, "V'chelav nevela v'chelav treifa ye'asa l'chol malacham." The chelav of a nevela, the chelav of a treifa, could be used for any type of malacha, meaning that it doesn't become tamei. Unlike a nevela, normally is metama. The chelav of a nevela is not metama, but it's also to eat. Zok the brisa, b'chelav behema tahira hakasa medaba. This is talking about the chelav of behema tahira, the chelav of a kosher animal, that if it dies, the chelav doesn't have the din to be metama. But not by the chelav of a behema tameya, a non-kosher animal. It says, how do I know it's talking about a behemoth tahira? Maybe it's talking about a behemoth tmei. Maybe it's talking about a non-kosher animal. Amit. So he said, that's like this. Tier mechlal shchuta. We have that something that was supposed to be tummy. If you shecht it, it becomes tar. The tier mechlal chelav. And chelav is also something that should have been an avela, right? An avela would be tamei, unless you shecht it, then it becomes tar. But tia mechlal chelav, and chelav is also something that's mitar, something an avela is normally tamei, but chelav we're saying is mitar. Mak shatia mechlal shchuta b'tahira, just like shchita is only mitar an animal by a behemoth tahira, a kosher animal, but not a non-kosher animal. Shechting a non-kosher animal doesn't make it non-avela. So too the dispensation that we say the chelev of a behema is not going to become tamei is only by a behema tahira and not a tameya. So we're saying essentially we're comparing it to shchita, just like shchita only helps on a kosher animal to make it not an avela, but it doesn't help for a non-kosher animal. So too, the heter of chelev, that it makes something that would have been tamei tar, that's only on a behemoth tahira and not a behemoth tameya. That's one svara. A klachel derech zu, but there'd be another way to analyze it. Tia michlal nevela, that there is a case of that's tar, a behemoth, something that's a non-kosher animal that doesn't, a non-kosher, I shouldn't say animal is like sort of giving it away. So the Gemara is going to have to explain later what this tir mechlal nevela is. But at this point, at least the first man d'amar who's going to look at it understands that to mean that a nevela of a behemoth tmeya is not going to be metama, which is certainly not the halacha, but that's what he understands the brisa to be saying. I guess I'll tell you what the Gemara's answer is going to be. The Gemara's answer is going to be ultimately that what it's referring to is oif tameh. Like we've said, this whole din that we talked about, that an oif is metama bebeis habliya. If a person swallows an oif that wasn't shechted or didn't have malika, he becomes tameh, als nevela. That only applies to an oif tar, but an oif tameh does not have that tuma. That's just not any sense to it. That's just the gzeres hakasef. So that's what it's tir mechlal nevela. An oif tameh is tir mechlal nevela. The tir mechlal chelev, and chelev is also something that was excluded, that it's not going to be tameh. Just like that which we said, that an oif tameh is excluded from becoming tameh with between mitam beis habliya with nevela, that only applies to an oif tameh and not a oif tahira. Maybe this din that that chaylev is not metama is only by a behemoth tmeya and not by a behemoth Torah. So that's the question. Amruk shaba b'derech zu hi b'Torah, shaba b'derech zu hi b'tmeya. So we are left with a quandary. Which way to analyze it? Should we analyze it in the first way, which will result that the pasuk of that says that chaylev doesn't become tummy is talking about a behemoth Torah, or should we analyze it the second way, which results that it only applies to a tmeya? Tamid laim treifa. That's what we have the pasuk. The pasuk says b'chel nevela b'chelev treifa. Misha yesh b'mina treifa. It says something that has by it a treifa, that there's an nafkamina between whether it's treifa or not. So that's only a behemoth Torah. Behemoth Torah, it depends on whether if it's a treifa, it's going to be usher. If it's not a treifa, it's going to be mutter. But on a behemoth tmeya, there's no such thing as a behemoth tmeya that's a treifa or not a treifa. In any case, it's usher to eat because of its status as a behemoth tmeya. So the fact that we say treifa, that tells you to understand the heter of chaylev as applying to a behemoth Torah. Correct the Gemara. If so, now that we're saying that we're excluding the behemoth tmeya, we're not talking about when we say chaylev is tar, that's only a behemoth Torah, not a behemoth tmeya. So based on the way we darshan, we said the reason is because the Torah tamalei betreifa, and treifa only applies to a behemoth Torah, so that should also include a chaya, the chaylev of a chaya, that it should be included in this heter that the chaylev of a chaya should not be metama. Tamalei of eichel lo yisachlu. It says that you shouldn't eat it. Misha chalva asur upsara mutter. It only is referring to something that the chaylev is asur, but the basar is mutter. It's saying that you can't eat it. Yatsa chaya shechalva upsara mutter. But that excludes the chaya, because the chaya, there's no isser of chaylev, of eating chaylev on a chaya. So when it says va'eichel lo yisachlu, it means something that the chaylev, we're saying that the chaylev is asur to eat, but the chaylev of a chaya is not asur to eat. Okay, so that is the drasha. Again, that's the drasha that the Bryce is telling us, that when the Torah said that chaylev is not going to be metama al nevela, that it's referring to a behemoth kshera and not a behemoth tmeya, as well as it's not referring to a chaya. Amalei Rav Yaakov bar Abba l'Rava, but Rav Yaakov bar Abba asked Rava, and this is what we were talking about before. The problem with the analysis, that he had said that maybe you could say that it's talking about a behemoth tmeya because a nevela is mutter by a behemoth tmeya. He says, you're saying that the behemoth tmeya is not metama. We said that nevela is not metama by a behemoth tmeya. That's not true. A behemoth tmeya is metama as nevela. So what does it mean? Amalei kamasabi shabishtuba. Many of the elders have made this mistake. You misunderstood. Seifa etan l'nevelis oif tame. That's talking about an oif. By an oif, the taka is such a din that the oif tame is not metama and the oif tar is metama als nevela. There's no din of nevela that it's metama beis abliya by an oif. So that's what the Brisa was referring to.
By an oif or by an oif tummy?
I'm sorry?
By an oif or by an oif tummy?
When the Brisa was saying that we find that there's such a thing that nevela only applies to a tahira, to a tahira and not a tmeya, meaning a kosher animal and not a non-kosher animal, the Brisa was not referring to animals, it was referring to oifus. And by oifus, that's taka the rule, that the tumat's nevela only applies to an oif tar and not an oif tameh. But the Brisa, certainly the point of the Brisa is talking about behemoths. But the raya that it had brought, or the idea, the tzad that it had brought, that we should say that the pasuk is talking about a behemoth tmeya, was based on the fact that we find that there's such a thing that an oif is metama, is only metama by a tahira and not a tameya. I'm sorry, it's very confusing because I don't have good words. We keep on saying tame and tar, and there's two things included in tame and tar, right? There's
Right.
an animal that's non-kosher, or an oif that's non-kosher, which is what we're talking about here. And there's also the obviously the tum and taira of becoming I don't know what other word to use, non profaned.
No, it's sort of a Tumas mace, but it's not
Right,
a
right. Like
person.
exactly the tum of nevela, tumas nevela.
Tumas Mela, right.
The problem is nevela also makes it non-kosher. So we use this is what I was talking about yesterday, that we use the one word, we say kosher and non-kosher. It includes like that it could be non-kosher because it's an animal that's non-kosher. It could be an nevela. If it's not shechted properly, it's non-kosher. If it's a treif, it's non-kosher. And then on top of that, we also have nevela makes, in addition to making things non-kosher, it also makes it tame. Okay, so that is really the confusing part of this Gemara, is that the terminology is we don't use very precise terminology. Okay, so now the Gemara, we're finished with the digression of Chalev, but so we're going back now to the original machlekes or Yehuda and Rameir in the Mishnah, right? Whether you do malika and you do malika on a carbon and you find that the animal is a treifa. We saw a machlekes. Rameir says that it's not going to be tamei al nevela because it's a treifa. We don't say that the malika is an invalid malika and therefore the behema is tamei. And he says no, it had a malika, so it's a treifa, but it's not going to be mitama al nevela. And Yehuda says it is mitama. Amar Rav Yechon, lo tir Reb Meir ela b'tmimin. That which Reb Meir said, if you do malika on a bird, and you find it to be a treifa, that it's not going to be tamei tumas nevela, that's only if the animal didn't have a mum. Aval babali mumin loy. If it has a mum, then the malika is very invalid, right? Because then it's not just a treifa that it has a flaw. That's something that wasn't capable of being brought in the mizbeach. This whole malika is a farce. You're doing malika on a Baal Mum. The Baal Mum could never have been brought as a carbon. Rabbi Yochanan said it's excluding Mali Mumin. The Bali Mum would be Tameh. Rabbi Lazar says no, even a Baal Mum would be tar according to Reb Meir.
No, there's a Tumas Nevela we're talking about.
Right, Tumas Nevela. It's certainly not going to be a kosher or carbon. Itmar Nami. Amar Bibi Amar Rabbi Lazar Mitar HaYirmei B'Bali Mumin. He says the mitar by Bali Mumin, like we said, if you shecht it, it's not going to become Tommy Tumas Nevela. You do Malika, I should say. It's not going to become Tommy Tumas Nevela. Vafilu Bavoizin V'Tarna Goylin. Not just the Balmum, but even a bigger chiddush. If you brought a goose or a chicken, both of which I'm sure you've noticed, those are not kosher or carbonis. There's no carbon that's brought as, it only could be a Torah b'nei yaina. And he brought a totally incorrect species. It's still going to not have this din that it's such a non-carbon that we're going to say that it should be metama if you find it to if you do malik on it.
But if you do shchita on it and it's treif, then it would be matama.
If you do shchita on it, what do you mean? Outside of the base?
Yeah, stam shchita. You do shecht a tarnagol and it's a treifa.
Oh, that for sure. Of course, it would certainly be tar. It wouldn't be an avela.
It
If it's found to be a treifa,
right. So it wouldn't be a matama.
It would not be metama, no. According to Rameir. I'm not sure how it would work according to Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. I think it would still be tar. Boy Rav Yirmiyah. Rav Yirmiyah asked the following question. Araf A's Mahu. He wants to make a parallel between what we're talking about here. We're saying that if you do malika on a carbon, and you do the wrong, it's about mum, or if it's even a bird that's not capable of being an oif, brought as a carbon. So there's a similar din. There's also a din that a egla arufa has to be obviously a calf. What happened? And the din is that when you do arifa, which is cutting off the head, you split the head of the calf. It doesn't become an nevela to be metama. This is the way the Torah said. This is what the Torah said you should do. We learn that from Psukim, that it doesn't become tame tumas nevela. But what happens if you did it incorrectly? Similar to what we're saying here, where you did it incorrectly that you brought a balmum, or you did it incorrectly that you brought a goose or a chicken. What happened if you did egla arufa, you did it with a goat, which is clearly, you're not going to be yaitze your din of egla arufa, but does it have the din, just like we're saying that if you did malika on a chicken, it's not going to be metama. Maybe we should say, if you do arifa on a goat, it should also not be metama. Mao, what's it in? What's the reason why we said, as far as goats, as far as geese and chicken, that we say it's not metama to be nada oifes ninu, although it's not the correct bird, but it is an oif, so it's close enough to the target that it's not going to be an avela. For example, for sure, if you would bring a cow into the Beis Hamikdash, and you say, I'm going to do malika on it. Somehow he pushes his nail. He'll have to have some massive nail to do this. He pushes a nail through the spinal column of the cow. It's certainly going to become an avela because the cow is not shaykh. It's too far off from what the Torah said you could do with malika. So that's going to make an avela. So what do we say? Do we say by this goat that was brought? Do we say it's too far off from a egla? Because it's not although it's an animal, it's not in the same narrow category as oifus, that chickens are close enough to Turam B'nai Yaina that they could be included in the het. Aval is la minod, but we say a goat is not the same as an egla. Oidilma mina de behemahu. What do we say? No. Just like all oifus are going to be mutter with malika, all behemoths are going to be mutter with arifa. All behemoths are considered to be part of one category. Yazar Avdimi b'kama la hashmaitza. He said this over Amalei Abaya. He said to Abaya, Mechlal the egla arufa tahiri. What you see from this discussion, which we didn't really come to any resolution, but one thing that comes out is that if it is an egla arufa, that when you decapitate it, it's not matama as nevela, right? We're questioning whether if you do a goat, if it's not going to be tar, but the egla roof itself is certainly going to be tar. Is going to be tar. Amalei in. He said, hey, that's correct. Amid the Be'er of Yanai, the Be'er of Yanai said, how do we know that an egla roof is not matama al nevela? Kapara ksibba, kikachim. The Torah says that the egla roof is going to be a kapara, so that tells you it's like kachim, just like kachim. When you shech them or you do malika on them, they're not metama. So too, when you do arifa on an egla arufa, it's not going to be metama. Masir Rav Nasan Avua de Rav Huna. Va'achal lo'isaychlu. This is talking about the pasuk of chelev, that we say chelev behema, the chelev of an avelo or chelev of a treifa, you shouldn't eat, but you can use it for whatever you want, which tells us that it's not going to be tameh. But it ends off, the pasuk ends off, you shouldn't eat it. That tells me only chelev of something that's asa b'achila, but it's muta b'hana. The Torah says you shouldn't eat it, but it doesn't say you're not allowed to have hana from it. Chelev sheshar niskol ve'egla arufa minayin. How do we know that the chelev of the shar niskol and the egla arufa, that they're going to also become mutter from this pasuk? Talmud loima, that means mutter, that it's not going to be metama. Talmud loima kol chelev. The Torah says kol. Saktumara v'isal kadaitach egla arufa tahirahi he tahira v'chel v'tameh. If you're saying that the pasuk is including the chelev, that the this pasuk is telling you the chaylev of Shar Niskal is has it? No, I'm sorry. This is saying, are we talking about the Isser here of Achila? Are we talking about of the Isser or the Isser of Nevela? Trek the Gemara. Right. So we say that Chaylev is going to be mutter. Now, if you think that the basar of a egla arufa is tar, how could that be that you would conceive of the possibility to tell you that the chaylev should be also? We need a pasuk to tell you that the chaylev is mutter. If the whole behema is not going to be an avela, why would I think that the chaylev should be? There's no such thing that just the chaylev is going to be betame al nevela, right? We never find chaylev is more kal than the rest of the behema. We have a pasuk that says the chaylev of an avela is not metama. But if you are going to tell me that the whole egla arufa is not an avela, why do we need a pasuk to tell me that the chaylev of a egla arufa is tar? Sagt the Gemara, Heicha the arif mi arif leyitzrichale. Eina chanami. The pasuk that tells you that the chaylev of an egla arufa is tar is not necessary for a case where you cut off the head of the egla arufa. Ki etzricha heicha the shachta mishchet. We're talking about where you shechted it instead of doing arifa. Sagt the Gemara, v'tihani leishchita l'tahira midei nevela. The Gemara says, what is that? That's not any better. If he did a shchita instead of an arifa, it's certainly not going to be an avela. It certainly stops it from being an avela. So again, you wouldn't need a pasuk to tell me that the chaylev of a behemoth that had a shchita is not metama. We're talking about where the egla arufa died. And so therefore, when it died, I might say that the chaylev, since it's this is an egla arufa, which is asur bahana, so maybe it's different, maybe it's excluded from the pasuk of chaylev, because we say only those things that are mutter bahana. But this egla arufa, even though it died and now it becomes an avela, maybe the chaylev should be asur because it's not included in the general rule. Generally, when an animal dies, there's no isur hana, but this egla arufa is asur bahana. So you see that there's an isur hana on the egla arufa even before it's brought, even before it has its head chopped off or it dies. The Gemara says that's the case. I'm Rabbi Yanai, Vul Shamati v'shachachti. I forgot exactly when it is that an egla arufa first becomes asur bahana. And my friends reminded me that when it's brought down into the valley, that's what makes it. As soon as it's brought into the valley, even before you cut off its head, it becomes asur bahana. Okay. Let's at least see this next Mishnah. It's a very interesting Mishnah. And it's a Lomdish Mishnah. Hadran al Chatasai. Kol Hazvachim Shenis'aru B'chatoyes HaMesis. I don't know if we remember, but we've come across this concept a few times of Chatoyes HaMesis. These are animals karbanis, that are Chatoyes, that they have to be left out to die. Normally, we try to salvage a carbon that can't be brought. We try to be paid it or sell it. We wait for it to get a mum. But there are 5 chatayis, which include the vlad of a chatas, the child, if the animal had a child while it was waiting to be brought, or a chatas shemesa, baila, that the owners died, so they can't be brought for the owners, or if it was replaced with something, if you lost it and then you placed it with a different one, a list of 5 different things. If it aged out, all these chatayis, the din is that they have to be maced. They're asur bahana. You can't do anything with them. They're precluded from any use. They're asur bahana. So kol hazvachim, a regular carbon, that got mixed in with a chatas that has to be killed. Oy b'shar niskol, a shar that gets skila. That means a shar that normally the normal case of this is a shar that kills someone. The din is it's also asur bahana. You have to do skila on it. And you can't have any hana from it. Afilu achas biribuya, even if it's 1 out of 10,000, the Gemara is going to explain that this means that you had one chatas hamesa, or one shar and niskal that was mixed into 10,000 kosher karbanos. Yamusu kulan, they all have to die. The Gemara is going to explain why is it that it's not bottle, but the din is that it's not bottle, and therefore you got to kill all of them. You take them and you leave them out to die, but you can't, even if they get a mum, there's nothing you can do about it because they're asa bahana. Nis'arvu b'shar shenevda b'yaveira. But if instead of being mixed in with this one shar, this one shar in 10,000, you had a shar of a zevach that was a kosher zevach, and it got mixed in with a shar shenevda b'yaveira, a shar that is also to be brought as a carbon. The Rashi says that this is the general klal, and now we're going to explain the examples. What does it mean? Shenevda b'yaveiroi. What does it mean? Oy shehemis is adam al pi, which could be that it killed a person with one aid, so therefore it doesn't have the din. We only say that it gets the din of a shar niskal. That's also ba'na if there were two aidim, but if there was only one aid that saw that the shar killed, then the din is that it's still also to be brought as a carbon, but it doesn't have a isur hana. Oy al pi bailim, or if it was instead of being al pi echad, it was through the bailim, which again doesn't get a din of shar niskal, doesn't get killed, but it's just also to be brought as a carbon. B'roiveya v'nirva, or a roiveya nirva that was done al pi echad, that it's also, or al pi bailim, that those things are also going to be a din that it's also to be brought as a carbon, but it doesn't get killed. The muksa, if it was set aside to be used as a carbon for avodah zara, but nevad if it was worshipped as an avodah zara, so that again, this is something that is aser to be bought as a carbon. They are mutar bahana. Be'esnan, an animal that was used to pay for a zayna, or umachir kelev, or a animal that was used to pay for a dog. Such an animal is also to be used as a carbon, but again, it's not asa bahana. Beklayim, a animal that was bred, came from interbreeding of different animals. Ubetreifa, an animal that's a treifa is also to be brought as a carbon. B'yaitza daifin, or even an animal that was born through a cesarean is also to be brought as a carbon. All of these things are animals that can't be brought as a carbon, but they're not asa bahana. Yiru actually yistavu, in this case, in contrast to the first two examples of the Mishnah, of things that were asa bahana, that we said you have to wait for them to die, this you put the kosher carbon together with the non-kosher, the carbon, the animal that can't be brought as a carbon. Yiru actually yistavu, you put them both together on the side till they both get mumin, v'yimkru, and at that point you can sell them, and once it gets a mum, an animal that was set aside as a carbon, once it gets a mum, can be sold, and you can use the money to be used for the original carbon. Let's say the person was mechuyev v'chatas, and that was his kosher carbon, and he also had this got mixed in with this other animal that was a yaitze daifin, and therefore he can't bring it because he doesn't know which was the animal that was supposed to be the chatas, which was the yaitze daifin. And the two animals, one was worth $150 and one was $100. So he sells them together once they get mumin for $250, and then he has to take $150 and buy for it a chatas or a replacement chatas. He has to take the more expensive of the two animals because he doesn't know which was the animal that was originally set aside as the chatas. So he has to pay the higher amount for the replacement chatas, and the other one, the rest of the money is his to do with as he pleases, because that's the money for the other animal, which was just not able to be brought as a carbon, but it really belonged to him 100%.
And obviously, the one with if it was 1 in 10,000 would be the same halacha. Once all 10,000 get a moment, you pick the most expensive one.
You mean one puzzle of one and well, what are you
Yeah,
talking about?
yeah, exactly.
One
One,
puzzle of one, and with 10,000 kosher karbanos?
yeah, like the first case of the Mishnah, like we said,
Yeah,
like
so then
Ruya,
he's gonna have to do b'demei hayafa behen from all
like 10,000.
10,000. It's gonna be an expensive proposition. As we're gonna see in the next case of the Mishnah, he could end up underwater on this whole proposition. This arvu b'chulin tmimim, if it was mixed in with chulin that's tamim, then in that case he doesn't have to go to this extent of selling everything. He could just sell the chulin. L'tzarchei oisa hamin. What he does is he sells it to someone. Let's say he has to bring a chatas, and it got mixed in with a kosher animal. That's a chulin. It's just not set aside for anything. So he finds someone else who has to bring a chatas. He says, "Listen, I'll sell you. You need to bring a chatas. I got this animal, these two animals here. I'll sell you one of them, and then we'll take both of them and let's bring them as chatas. And the kohen will say whichever one belonged really to the original seller, that should be his, and the other one should be the chatas for the person who bought the other one. So that's the eitzah. They couldn't do that in the first case because the second animal wasn't able to be brought as a carbon. But in this case, you don't have to wait for it to get a mum. You could sell it as it is, and just have
So,
the kohen have in mind that though the chata should go to whichever one was supposed to.
so obviously they would need to be the same price then, right?
I don't know. I didn't really think. As I was saying it, I was thinking through what the price situation is going to be. I would imagine um, he could do whatever, he could negotiate whatever price he wants, I guess, with this person, right? What's the problem? He's not being
Because
he's not
maybe he
being
was.
paida. He's just selling. He's going over to this guy. Listen, there's one animal that's worth 1,000, there's one animal that's worth 100, but we're bringing them as karbanis. If you offer me $500, I'll give you the opportunity to buy whichever one is not the one that I brought. And anyway, it's going as a carbon. This guy
Right.
has to bring a chatas. So, if he's willing to pay $500 for it, he's willing to pay 500. He's willing to pay 1,000 or whatever he's willing to pay, whatever the market will bear. You'll go over to the guy, you'll tell him you're getting a possibility of getting $100 animal, you might be getting $1,000 animal for your chatas. We don't
This
know.
feels like a very unique case. The Gemara can talk about this case a lot.
I don't
It's
know.
almost like a tamura. It's almost like a tamura. It's like a funny case where you have one of two animals. You know one of them is your chatas. You have one of two animals. You know the other guy's his chatas. But you don't know.
Who's
So
is who?
when the other
Yeah.
guy was mekadosh that animal to bring as when he was mekadosh to be a
Well,
chatas,
the other guy he wasn't Makadesh it. He just said he's just owes the chatas. He by mistake, ate some chaylev, and he
but
has
he
to
doesn't
bring
know
the
which.
chatas.
Yeah, but he doesn't know which animal he's putting it on. He can't identify which one.
What does he care? You don't have to like put your hands on it to be Makadesh. You're just saying I'm being Makadesh an animal.
The Baal doesn't need to be samech on it. Like it doesn't need to be his chatas. Like how does
Um,
that work?
I don't know if there's smicha. I don't think there's smicha. I don't know. It's a carbon that doesn't need smicha. You have a good question. What would be if you have to do smicha? Maybe you do smicha on each of them. They each do smicha on each one.
Strange
Doesn't
case. Yeah.
I think I don't know how it works. I think there's an isser to lean on an animal. I think the Gemara does talk about that. How do you do smicha when you're not sure if it's your animal? That's a separate question. It's yeah. Listen, it's it's interesting. Yeah.
Is this like the case of Yesh Breira, Ain Breira? Because
Well,
retroactively, the Kohen has to figure.
that's only where you have to know in the end. Over here, we don't have to know. He knows his chatas was brought. We just don't know which animal it was the one that was brought as his chatas. But the kain is saying, I definitely want these two chatas to be l'shem bailam. The Ber Shalom knows which one is that person's. I don't know that that's a problem of Breira, right? Breira is where you have to know for some reason, but the Ber Shalom knows, and he's getting his kapara, even though he doesn't know, right? Like let's say the guy is sitting home in in Tel Aviv when the animal is brought. He doesn't know when it was brought. He doesn't know all the details, but he just knows I sent a chatas and it was taken care of. So it's the same thing. It was taken care of. He just doesn't know which animal it was. Okay. Zok the Gemara. Kachim b'kachim. What if you had two types of animals, two animals that were mixed up together? Min b'mina, if they're both chatayas, for example, zeh yikarav l'shem yishu, v'zeh yikarav l'shem yishu. This is like a more direct example of the previous case. If you just have two people that own chatayas, they got mixed up, they had separated chatayas, they got mixed up, the kohen just brings them l'shem whoever it was that was supposed to bring that one. There's nothing that needs to be done. But if you have two animals, one is a chatas and one is an oila, then you have a problem because the avodas hadam is different for them. They're brought differently. So yirach yistavu, that case you have to wait for it to get a mum. V'yavu d'mei yavasha behen min zeh or d'mei hayava mehen min zeh. You're going to have to buy. You have to wait for them to get mummin, and then you could be paid to them. So you know that money is now available. Let's say it's the same person. So he has now he sold one animal for 150 and one for 100. Now he has to buy two new animals, one for his chatas and one for his ayla, but each one he has to spend 150 because he doesn't know which one was the ayla and which was the chatas. So he can't sell short either of his karbanis that he had to bring. If it was originally a chatas that was $150, he can't then replace it with another animal that's only $100. He has to use all the money from that chatas to buy a new one. So therefore he has to buy both of them, both of the animals have to be with the more expensive amount. So Min b'shenim yirach yistav v'yavid me yavshem min zeh me yav mehen min zeh v'yafsid ha'maisa mi beisei. He's going to have to make up with the extra from his own funds. Misavu b'bechar b'maiser. If it got mixed up with the bechar and maiser, so bechar and maiser have a different din. That bechar and maiser you don't sell. You can't sell it when it gets a mum. You just eat it as is. But even though you could eat it, but there's certain restrictions on how you eat it. So what you do is you take the bechar and maiser. If it gets a mum, yirach yistav. Well, you wait for it to get a mum. V'yoichlu k'bechar u'k'maiser. He still has to eat it. He waits till it gets a mum. He eats it as a bechar and maiser, and the rest of the money he's going to have to use. Misalva bechar and maiser. Yeah, and then. So right, so you have to be paida. You can't sell it, but what you have to do is set aside. You have to be paida the amount of money equal to whichever is the most expensive animal, and that's going to be your pidyon for the other carbon and the actual animals themselves that got a mum. Both of the animals you're gonna eat with the chumras of bechar and meiser. Hakol yichayin l'sayirv. The Gemara says it's feasible to have these kind of mixtures that you mix up one animal with the other, except for chatas and asham. Like we're going to explain that chatas is a nekeva and asham is a zachar, and it's talking about it's past a year. The animals themselves are incapable of getting mixed up. You can always look at them and determine which is which. Okay, we'll stop over here. Shkayach. I'm definitely feeling better than